On October 2nd, 1999, 3-year-old Jared Attadrello went missing in the Roosevelt Forest Park in Colorado. 4 years later, 2 hikers discovered Jared's remains in the Big South Road, Powder Canyon area of the park. Soon after, search teams found a human skull and an old tooth. The cause of Jared's death remains undetermined. Authorities leaned toward the possibility that a wild animal had killed him. But what's strange is that Jared's clothes and even his shoes were found in perfect condition. His pants were even turned inside out. What could have stripped him of his clothes before it consumed him? "Just thinking about that sends chills down my spine," said Sheriff Bill Nelson, who was in charge of the investigation. It was a calm morning in the forest park on October 2nd, 1999, when Alan Attadrello was awoken by a knock at the door. It was his 3-year-old son, Jared. Jared claimed he wanted to join a group of hikers staying at their family run-in and hike up the mountain. Jared's 6-year-old sister, Jocelyn, was going with him. Alan had initially wanted to refuse, but after hearing the hikers assure him of their safety, he agreed. Alan told the kids to stick with the adults and not wander off. Alan and his brother ran the inn, providing lodging for travelers passing through. That day, the kids were heading to a trail called Big South Road, which was 22 kilometers long. The path was rough, steep, and challenging, even for experienced hikers. It took an average of 6 hours to complete. It was a must-pass for those crossing the forest. After the group set out, Jared was always in the lead. He was fascinated by 2 fishermen in a nearby river valley. Jared approached them and struck up a conversation. The report describes the scene as follows. Jared asked them if there were any bears around. The fishermen thought Jared was alone and became concerned for him. Only when they saw the group behind him did they ease their worries. They were said to be the last people to see Jared. About an hour later, the group realized Jared was missing. They searched the area and a few hikers returned to the inn to inform Alan. The conversation went like this. "Alan, what's going on? Is my child hurt?" Alan asked. No, Mr. Attadrello, it's not serious," the messenger replied. "Your son is just temporarily lost." Before the person could finish, Alan rushed up the mountain in his car, frantic, pounding his chest and crying out, "They've lost my child." The investigation that followed would reveal the full extent of what happened that day. Before Jared went missing, some members of the hiking group reported hearing strange screaming noises. One hiker recalled, Jared was running and playing happily. For about 20 to 30 minutes, everyone thought he was safe and would meet up with us ahead. But then we heard the scream, and that's when we realized something was wrong. When they rushed toward the sound of the scream, Jared was already gone. At 4 p.m., Alan returned to the inn and called 911. Sheriff Bill Nelson of Larimer County answered the call. At 6:30 p.m., the mountain rescue team arrived at the lower part of Big South Road, with approximately 65 search and rescue personnel dispatched to find Jared. By 8 p.m., the search operation expanded, and helicopters were called in. However, the helicopter crashed on the mountaintop, and the pilot suffered a serious concussion, halting the aerial rescue efforts. Despite this setback, more and more volunteers joined the search. By October 5th, over 200 trained rescue workers, several search dogs, wilderness survival experts, and a dive team were actively searching for Jared. Yet, they found no valuable clues. As the available leads dwindled, authorities decided to suspend the search for Jared, though independent investigations were allowed to continue. On May 6, 2003, 4 years after Jared's disappearance, Two hikers visited the Powder Canyon area of Big South Road and unexpectedly found a pair of shoes, a brown wool jacket, and a pair of blue athletic pants that were inside out. A large piece of fabric was missing from the pants. The hikers brought the clothing to the Larimer County Sheriff's Office. Sheriff Bill Nelson confirmed that these were indeed the belongings of the missing boy, Jared Attadrello. On June 14th, local authorities gathered a new search team and returned to the scene to search for Jared's remains. At 11:30 a.m. that day, searchers found a large, fragmented human skull near Jared's clothing. Above the skull and in the groin area, they found an old tooth. However, the rest of Jared's remains were never found. At first, Jared's death was believed to be the result of a large animal attack, but after analysis by animal experts and law enforcement, this theory was rejected. Sheriff Nelson stated, "I believe a mountain lion or bear could have carried him off. But animals don't remove someone's clothes and pants." Jared's father, Alan, also stated that the clothes were sent to a testing center, where no animal fur, DNA, or bloodstains were found. Several mountain lion experts also pointed out that if a mountain lion had attacked Jared, it would have targeted his abdomen and his jacket would have been torn. But the fact was, both his clothes and pants remained intact. The torn edges of Jared's pants were confirmed to have been chewed by some kind of predatory animal. The fabric had been pulled down by birds and woven into a nearby nest. Another theory, proposed by Alan, suggested that his son may have been kidnapped. However, there was no evidence to support that anyone had taken Jared. The investigation report included interviews with the hikers and the two fishermen who were present at the scene, all of whom had no motive for involvement. In fact, if someone had taken the child out of the canyon, they would have had to navigate a 45-degree slope, dense vegetation, and climb 2,000 feet in elevation. After Jared's remains were found, this theory was debunked, much like the theory of an animal attack. Then, an independent investigator named Lester Trod offered a different conclusion. Trod believed that Jared might have been taken by a Sasquatch living in the area. He had been searching for answers about Jared's death for years. As early as October 12, 1999, Trod captured a series of strange photos in the area where Jared went missing. Some of the photos showed large footprints, much larger than human tracks, and made by bare feet. Trod wasn't just an independent investigator. He was also a wilderness survival expert who had hiked in North America's forests for many years. He was familiar with the fact that some massive humanoid creatures lived in the area. "Sometimes, when I enter the forest, something throws rocks and sticks at me. It feels like they're trying to drive me away," Trod said. In other photos, one could faintly make out a humanoid figure standing deep in the forest, watching him. Although Trod presented this theory to the police, it received no response. Interestingly, in one report about Jared's disappearance, there was a description that read, "Clothing scattered about 150 feet from where Jared was last seen, on a very steep slope. It would take about 30 minutes to climb. There were no bloodstains on the clothing, and years of rain would have washed any blood away. The clothes were covered with two types of animal hairs in black, some reddish-brown. We can't yet determine what kind of animals these hairs came from. The hair samples will be sent to a more specialized lab for analysis." However, many years have passed, and no report has ever mentioned the results of the hair analysis. This raises suspicions that certain truths may have been concealed. Additionally, Trod believes that Jared's remains may have been buried somewhere at the scene. The creature that took Jared was extremely intelligent, knowing how to evade human capture and hide the body. waiting for the human search efforts to conclude before consuming the boy. The forest where Jared went missing is made up of multiple high-altitude peaks, with the highest reaching over 9,000 feet. Apart from some resort areas, 90% of the forest remains rarely visited by humans, preserving its pristine natural state. The park was established by Theodore Roosevelt in 1908 and is still named after him. Coincidentally, Roosevelt himself had an encounter with the mysterious creature known as Sasquatch, which he documented in his novel, The Wilderness Hunter. In the book, Roosevelt describes how a Sasquatch destroyed a hunter's camp and killed one of the hunters. This mysterious and ancient creature hides in the mountains of North America, and while humans fear them, they are even more afraid of humans. Over 20 years have passed, and the case of Jared Attadrello's disappearance has never resulted in an official ruling of death. The case sparked one of the largest search operations in Colorado's history, even gaining more attention than the contemporaneous murder of a child beauty queen. Alan, having suffered from the blow of a failed marriage, once fell into despair. He later joined a Christian religious group, hoping to find solace, but tragically, it was a member of this same group who took Jared hiking on that fateful day. They failed to uphold their promise to look after Jared. To this day, Trod continues to search for the truth for Jared's family, while the religious members responsible for losing the child have long since disappeared. After the tragedy, Alan lost the desire to manage the parks and he preserved his son's belongings and used his old bedroom to create a shrine in memory of his deceased son. When Alan returned to his son's room and held his son's skull, tears streamed down his face. "I always tell people that pain is the most direct manifestation of love," Alan said.